Our team symbol.
Yeah.
We're the Star Trek Voyager chairs. Yeah, you can go there.
Wait, can we
Oh, Patricia, you're here. Look, there's already a sign.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Is that enough?
We're Kirk and Spock, okay?
I'm a Hulu or whatever his name is.
Uhura.
Ahura. Okay, sorry. I had some trouble with my tribbles right now.
Welcome to the Women's Press Conference. From left to right, we have Richard Linklater, Patricia Arquette, Ethan Hawke, Ellar Coltraine, and Lorelei Linklater.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming out here.
Welcome to your intervention.
Yeah. We're here
Well,
to...
I'll start. It was a great film. I just wondered, could you talk about what happened in between the years when you're not filming? Did you keep in contact with the children so that there was a close family tie? How did it get, when you would film each year, how did you get back together? Did you rehearse? Did you, I just don't know.
We didn't
how
exist.
You kept that family.
we were
perspective, we
unplugged.
definitely
Yeah.
We'd end each year and kind of talk about the next year a little bit, like what I felt was coming next year. And then, given everyone's schedules and busyness, this was everyone's side project, my own included. I was doing a lot of other films in these 12 years, and everybody was busy. So, but we would talk about it. It was always on a burner. It was something to think about. But Ellar and I would often get together and talk about next year a little bit. Ethan, we would just talk on the phone, whatever. But it would get really tense once it was around time to shoot.
We would, Rick would talk to us a few weeks before about sort of the specifics of that coming year. Okay, you guys are going to have this scene in this coffee shop, and he's about to go here, and you're doing this, and you're talking about a garage sale or whatever. And then I'd fly in, we'd all do like our wardrobe fitting in the corner with a bunch of stuff they picked up at Goodwill while we were talking about like ideas we thought our character might say or experiences someone had had or their mother had had or their brother had had or a friend, and then we would incorporate things, and then Rick would decide. Sometimes we'd be up to like 2 a.m, all of us. I mean, when the kids were little, they weren't really participating so much in that writing aspect of it. Except Rick would ask them, like, hey, you guys, what would you do if blah, blah, blah? And they'd say, oh, that's cool. But when they got older, they really started bringing a lot to the table.
And then there'd be other interesting moments, like you invited me to come visit. Your dad was playing in New York one year, and I remember calling. I went to go visit Ellar. Ellar was helping his father as a musician, and Ellar was a little roadie, and I went to go visit him, and I remember walking home and calling you and saying, this is kind of there's something moving about this sound check, and I think that started the idea of visiting my other character as a possible finale. But it's how ideas turn into other ideas. There was something really. Because, of course, our father in the narrative was kind of giving up on being a musician and saying, but there is something always so touching about a sound check. I don't know why. A performance to come or something.
Yeah, this movie was just a life project for all of us. We were committed for these years, and everything, you could just have your antenna out. That's a good way to go through life, like, oh, that could feed into this, or this would happen to a friend of mine, or this memory I haven't had, all these years, it just came to me about something from my own childhood. It was all in play all these years, and that's what made it kind of the fun life project that it turned out to be.
Was there any worry about taking on such an ambitious project? 12 years is a long time. You could lose your actors. Maybe they don't want to do it anymore. You could lose funding. Maybe your momentum kind of slowed us down. Was there any worry about that?
I was worried about that, particularly in the early years. Our biggest gap was between years 1 and 2, and that was just sheer scheduling and busyness. And I was thinking, oh wow, to get that, you have to. In the end, is so far away; it's abstract. It got easy the second half because it was like we're halfway there. You could kind of see it a little more each year.
It gained momentum the more
last
we
half.
were in
The
it.
first half felt kind of. Sometimes it was, But you're committed. You do it. It's just you can't think any other way, and no one ever,
Knowing Rick, I never had any fear that we wouldn't
Yeah.
finish. It could become more problematic than it was. Jonathan Searing at IFC really believed in this project and was there supporting. And, he could have gotten fired. I mean, that happens to executives
All
of
the
these
time.
things.
Yeah.
Or the IFC could go under. Most
I
independent
know.
film companies do go under. I thought if that happened, well,
we would hustle.
we'd hustle another
At
way.
least
Right.
we'd have something to show for it, and someone could come aboard. It's less risk, but
But the fact that Jonathan kept his job and he kept hiding a little bit of money every year for us. It was-
having to jump through hoops at a corporate level. Where
yeah,
you're going, what
what's
the
this?
hell?
What's this $100,000 to Boyhood?
I mean, we don't get our money back till when? It's a huge leap. Yeah, that's really, statistically, people have asked even the bigger, crazier questions, like, well, what if someone died? I said, odds are we were all going to be here 12 years from now. I said the odds were really low that the original financing that he would still have his job, given our industry. So
Yeah.
that's the statistical anomaly that we're with the same company all these
But
years.
even that any company would fund it at all.
Yeah,
It's
from the
almost
beginning.
statistically
No,
impossible.
we felt blessed. We felt blessed so many times. Like Ethan's running to get the plane, and we're at the bowling alley, and it's written here, Lorelei has to bowl a strike.
And it took one bowl. That's
Two,
it.
I think it was your second roll.
But that's what every time I see
nailed
that,
it.
when I see that shot, the look on my face is actually, I'm going to make my plane and not get fired because I wasn't supposed to be. I'd kept it from another production that I was even in Austin. They thought I was in Toronto prepping for some other movie.
Yeah, so but every year, and the pressure, like at the baseball game too, we were. Again, you just feel like you're blessed from the film gods or something. It's like we had filmed the whole scene, and we just needed something for the Astros to do offensively, which for them that year was a huge challenge. And I had the lens. I was just, okay, maybe someone will hit. Just we need something to happen on the field. Right where we're pointing the lens, Jason Lane hits a home run, not out of frame, but right down the lens. No digital. That's a real home run in a major league game. Pan over, Ethan's going crazy. All of us are going crazy because we couldn't believe this happened.
Yeah, we didn't set it up like, okay, now the camera's
I could
ready.
get the best
take
hitter in
12
baseball and
swings.
say,
Yeah.
hit it where the camera's pointed, and they can't do it. They just can't do it.
We got so lucky. And mostly, I mean, the biggest luck of all, in a lot of ways, was Lorelei and Ellar.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
their contribution, we could have never predicted that they would contribute on the level that they both did. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
that was,
that's
that was
the
the
real-
biggest cinema guy.
the
Of course,
super
they've turned
grand
into
prize.
losers ever since. We finished. It's, right,
Some
Lorelei?
people aren't laughing in this room.
Richard, I'm a big fan of your Before Sunset trilogy, and my question is, how do you decide which pop culture trend at the time to kind of let the audience know at what age these young boy and girl are at? Like I noticed the Will Ferrell's video, and then the Harry Potter one. I mean, how do you choose which ones?
Well, that was part of the fun of this. Again, having your antenna out there. Not only were you collaborating with incrementally aging and growing up, actors, but the culture. What's going on in the world? When we started this movie, the Iraq War hadn't started, and every year you had some choices to make of what you wanted to represent in the movie, and always thinking like, will that be remembered? We were making a period film, but in the present, which is an odd thing to do. But where would the changes come? What does it mean?
Will people remember that Sarah Palin's daughter was pregnant? Will that is that
have to make
but
that
is that
choice.
registering the national consciousness in such a way that it'll be the kind of thing you remember, or is it the kind of thing that won't remember?
Yeah.
But
It
I
sort of
also
works either
really
way,
felt
but-
like you didn't lead with that.
Yeah, I didn't want it to be what the movie was about.
It was really
but-
a minor conversation towards the end of everything. And the truth is, technology is so much a part of our life now. I mean, you go to a restaurant, there's 3 people at a table, and they're all texting other people that aren't at the table or each other. I don't know what they're doing. But, I mean, you would film that in a movie, you'd think it's a joke or something. You would think, oh my God, you're really hitting me over the head with this technology thing. It's real life. So I feel like it was we talked about it, like the war and mortgaging and houses going under and the
you get a
economy.
sense of the
And
financial crisis. Yeah.
because it is part of our fabric of this time period that we're living in. But it was very secondary to
Yeah, it was
what
never
we were,
the lead story.
No, we were really breaking down scenes, talking about how we felt, and
Yeah, and then we could just incorporate those things. I mean, the Harry Potter book thing, that was more of an effort because that scene's really so much about that. But that was kind of
it's
a
also
phenomenon that I thought you would remember, if you look back on your life, because that didn't happen when I was a kid, and that might not happen in the future.
But
that
Star
kids show
Wars
up
did. And
you know.
magical
Yeah.
innocence and big impacting moments
That
that
was-
you remember when you're little and your parents go out of their way to support that fantasy time in your life. The weird thing is really if you'd removed all of the iPads and old computers and from this movie and the conversation about
Yeah, some of the...
Obama or whatever, you would actually be disingenuous to this time that we've grown up. You have to incorporate that, or you'd be making some weird movie,
in
that's
some parallel,
unauthentic.
non-real,
Yeah.
yeah.
Could you guys talk about it's because Richard did not use of the different kids for each age, so as a parent character, so as an actor, what's the benefit to do this project for 12 years? You didn't get special makeup.
We got a lot of money. We all got paid so much.
Keep drawing everybody back.
He had a lot of secret information about each of us. So we had to do it blackmail.
Coercion. Nothing like good old coercion. And
I don't really understand what's your question?
What was the benefit as an actor to spend the 12 years, didn't use the 3 months and the different kids, different...
Just so fun to tell a real story about a real family. I mean, so much of the problem with most movies is they create a false narrative so that it has a beginning, middle, and end that all takes place over 6 months. But our lives never feel like that. Like we have moments of grace or moments where we feel something deeply or something, but it's because of 90 million other things that happened before it, not just that moment. And so I found it's so enjoyable to tell a story without any lies in it like that, to get to tell a story about a family that really got... Time is so much a part of what makes you close to people. I mean, what's the expression, you don't make any new old friends? Time is what creates trust. And so we got to do that with each other, and we got to do that with the audience. The audience starts to believe these characters because they were watching them experience time with each other.
And we did. We had that. I was thinking about that today. We had that fabric of experience together, acting and making a movie is an intimate process, hopefully, anyway, to some extent. But to actually have these years of coming back together and growing together, getting married, getting divorced, having children, people having breast cancer, more divorces, babies being born.
we had like 5 kids amongst us in the time. I mean,
Yeah.
a whole life went by
Yeah.
for
So to
all of
bring
us,
all
and
of that.
these guys grew up. It was pretty magical.
And we got older, and we, who we were playing, parents at 33, 34, that's who we were. We were 33, 34, and that was our perspective on life, and that was the lens we saw things through. And these guys, their age, and then by the time we were 45, it was like, your choices are different. Your reactions are different. And the kids it just was rich and all of that.
What is it like to watch the end result and kind of watch yourselves over those 12 years, and specifically for Lorelei and Ellar? I mean, it's you growing up on screen, but also you as actors, you can see both of your characters really developing and having that arc in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and certainly, I mean, it's kind of, we changed the most drastically, I guess, but kind of one of the most amazing parts to me is just how much everyone changes, and just how, there's kind of this idea that you kind of reach a certain point and stop, you're just an adult and that's just it, but everyone grew up a lot, and it's a really kind of elusive part of existence, I think, to the way you change over time. It's something that it's really hard to see in yourself, because when you're experiencing your life, you can't, there's no way, you can look in the mirror every day, but you can't really experience how you've changed in 6 months, or much less, a decade. And so it's very, it's very interesting to see.
very few people have ever been in a situation Lorelei and Ellar are in. I mean, they're playing
To be asked
fictional
that
characters,
question.
but it's their physicality and their things. So, Lorelei, you want to chime in? You have anything?
Or Ethan and Patricia, are you better actors now? Do you look at as how you were as an actor 12 years prior and think, oh God, I could have done better? And also for Richard, could you have been a better director? I mean, when you look at your work.
I don't choose to ever look at it that way. I mean, I'm just, these are the circumstances, you did your best, and this is what we got. Filmmaking is really about dealing with the reality, particularly in the editing. Here's what we shot. Here's the clay we've been given to mold. So,
but that
it was a consistent tone. I didn't want to evolve as a filmmaker. I didn't want, it was telling this story the way it was originally conceived and to maintain a tone. I didn't want it to become something else. Or you can't look back and go, oh, I'd do anything different.
No, because also what I love, if you're going to just love the pretty moments, like the beautiful image of this frozen moment, I love the ugly things anyway. The things that I hate are also the things that I love. And the mistakes are what makes something human, not the perfection that makes something human. Like, you could have an actor, and there have been movies where older actors go back and they play a teenager or something. You can play a teenager, but when you're a teenager, you are one. So whatever mistakes you make or flaws you make at 32 acting something, those are the choices a 32-year-olds are going to make. And that's probably something authentic to that.
Ethan, same thing for you? Do you look at it and think, oh God, I could have done that so much better, but that was the best I could do at the time?
I kind of think what both of these guys just said. I mean, Rick talked about the editing room, you're dealing with the finite thing, but being on set is like that too. It's one of the joys of doing a play is you have this time to go to sleep at night and dream about the scene, and then maybe, oh, it's better if I pick up the mic a little bit later, the scene. But on a film set, you just you're presented with this situation. Well, the bowling alley looks like this, and my costume doesn't fit exactly right, and I wished I had a better haircut, but we've got to start rolling now, or you know what I mean? I mean, there's just certain things that happen, and you just have to deal with it. And so when you ask that question, my first thought is, I wish I would like to think I'm a better actor now, but I'm just dealing with the hand I have now. I mean, I'm not a better actor now. I wish I was. It's a nice idea, but I don't feel that. I'm just a different actor. I mean, I can look at The Explorers, and I did a movie I did when I was 14 years old, and it's obvious there's certain things that I don't know my way around a sentence, and I don't know how to pronounce my T's, and I'm kind of avoiding the camera. I can sense that. I can see that. I can see tricks that I learned, but I'll never be that. There's something wonderful about being 14.
Yeah,
I mean, these guys were so much more natural than I was. For years and years, I was terrified of the camera, but they grew up with it.
And we were placed in a really interesting position to be professional actors acting with you guys. I mean, it's a dangerous situation to be put in because you can really look like a movie actor in the bad way, really, when you're next to a neat, 12-year-old boy who's really just playing things honestly. It's like, why are you making faces? Why won't you turn to the right? And I love their naturalism and their even the ways in which they are awkward are interesting, and speak of who they are and speak of who their character is. And I don't know. I found that whole part of it really a challenge in a good way.
Ethan, going through this journey on screen through Mason's eyes, does it remind you of some of the milestones that you went through as a boy? Anything you can share with us that really hit home?
Well, don't you think that's the fun of watching this movie? It makes every person think that. I mean, the weird thing about this movie is that it's incredibly unique in specifics. Samantha's got pink hair, this thing's happening, but it all reminds us, oh, I remember when my friend did that, or our experiences, just as a line in the movie, you know, our experiences are not as unique as we feel them to be. When you're going through adolescence, it feels very specific to you and your problem. And you're getting a divorce. It's really specific. It's, well, this happened on Wednesday, and if I'd only said that on Tuesday. And then when you step back, you start to see, God, oh, so many people have similar experiences. And that's what I love about this movie.
For Ellar and Lorelei, you were so young when you both first agreed to do this. And when you're that young, you don't really have a concept of the scope of things or the passage of time. So was there a moment for both of you when it just hit you what you were doing, how the outcome could affect your lives, who you were working with, and what it was all about?
I mean, that's still happening now. You know, the kind of the object of it being like being a film on a screen someday was kind of removed, at least for me. You know, that was almost kind of abstract, the idea that it was going to be like viewed by people, and you know, that this would be happening someday. So it's been very gradual, I think, to, I don't know, just see. I mean, yeah, for one, the passage of time and how something can affect you over that long, because, you know, when it's like, even if you 12 years is a long time, and that's going to be a big deal, but you have no reference really for how experiences unfold, you know, over an amount of time when you just haven't had that many experiences. And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there was any one point, but it's certainly, you know, my understanding of the project has grown a lot, I think. And, I mean, really the most, I think, just since watching it, because I never saw any of it throughout filming. I never saw any of the footage, so neither of us did. So it was just kind of this distant, you know, goal of it being a movie, and it's very different to see it now. You know, as far as kind of being like looking back and, you know, like wishing I would have done things differently. That's kind of the beauty of it, is that it's like I was only halfway aware that it was actually a film, so I was just kind of unaware, you know. I wasn't like crafting myself to be some character, you know, and so it's just what they got is what they got, and to look back, you're kind of forced to just accept these more awkward parts of myself that, you know, at the time, if I had like a direct kind of image of, if I'd gone back and watched the footage, I probably would have felt very self-conscious and tried to, you know, act differently or hide those things, but I didn't really have the chance, so.
The other thing is, these guys were both not more interesting, but they were very different than their characters in some ways. Like, Ellar had a dancer mom who's like an actress, and then the dad was a musician, and Lorelei's parents, and she was listening to harpsichord music from the 1500s, which most kids her age didn't do, and so a lot of times it would be like, you guys, your character wouldn't dress the way you do, or, you know,
your character hadn't had that experience. Your character hadn't been to Europe. Your character hadn't, you know,
all of that stuff. And Lorelei, pretty early on, was definitely making choices that were different than herself and her character. And Ellar was a little younger, but then he too, like, Ellar would look too cool, you know, so, for Mason. So they'd both be like, sometimes like, do I really have to wear this?
Richard, can you tell us a little bit about the music? How did you choose the specific music that you used?
Yeah, I mean, music's a really powerful, it really puts you in a place and time. I kind of waited to the end to really put all the music in the movie, just to see how time was treating a lot of different music and music, put it in. But, you know, the music, it's a lot of different things in the movie. It's serving a lot of different purposes. You know, the taste of the characters who are listening to it at a given time, and kind of wanted it to reflect maybe the culture as you perceive it as a kid. It's not really your music. Maybe it's your older siblings listening to it. Maybe it's coming out of the car radio or from friends. It's just music that's in the culture but not really yours. And then there's your own music as you kind of mature and kind of have your own taste and make those choices. So it kind of runs the gamut there. So we got lucky too. We got a lot of great music for a low budget film here. Very fortunate that people came aboard. All the artists, kind of for not much money, were willing to be a part of the project.
How much of this was scripted and how much was ad-libbed? I couldn't really tell.
I don't think we ever really. There's just a couple moments in the whole film, and usually I'd have two cameras and we had rehearsed it, but it wasn't so scripted. There's a couple moments. The Star Wars quote. There's a fight early in the movie with the Star Wars bit, but we still kind of knew what was going to happen. But the rest of it is it's scripted. It's just sometimes we're scripting it up to the last minute to get the words right. It's never so much about the exact dialogues. It's really the tone, the feel, what we're trying to accomplish with the scene. All the thought went into that. I knew the last shot of the movie 10 years before we shot it. I didn't have the dialogue written till less than 24 hours before when we're driving out there. And that's not insecure about that. I know we'll come up with something, but all the years of thinking about it gives me confidence the words will reflect the proper notes that we need at this point. So the whole thing was very structured and planned out, character trajectories and such, but the exact dialogues were often being worked up in different, sometimes last minute, sometimes, a couple year in advance, a big scene, we start thinking about it. Ethan would, we were together in Greece on our previous film together, and we were working on that last scene, with Ellar. We got big run-ups to certain scenes, and certain scenes were last minute. So it runs the gamut. There's no one thing, but we certainly didn't have time and a budget to just turn on a camera.
Yeah, we
hope
never
something
sat
happened.
around like, hey, let's just improvise this scene.
I've never
we
done
had
that
a
in
written.
any of my films, so that's just, I'm glad it feels real, but you don't achieve it that way.
With the editing process, I'm just wondering how that went. It went year by year. Was there like a finality to each year's? Like you would lock it down each year,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the very end you wouldn't go back and tweak it at all, or?
No, it was a living, breathing thing. What didn't even feel like a film. We would edit that year's footage, attach it to everything that came before, this ever-growing thing, go back and edit the whole film up to that point again. And it was always in flux, always. It was such a luxury. Most films, you have to do all your thinking in the build-up, and once you start production, say you're shooting 6-day weeks or even 5-day weeks, it's a hustle. You're in the manufacturing phase, and up to the end, and then you have this reflective editing era to maybe go back in and tweak the story like that. This was the complete opposite. We'd shoot three days on average, edit that, and then I'd have a year to just think what's next. We all did, that gestation time was so incredible. I really wanted to take advantage of that because that's what film usually doesn't give you. It's a hustle. You have to think on your toes during production, which I love too. That's just the way it is. But we were outside of that practical reality. This didn't even feel like a film. We didn't have a release date. We didn't really know what the future would be. There was no producers around saying, oh, well, our audience has to, nothing. This was our project with just no constraints whatsoever in it. I've never felt so much like I was making a film that had its own life, that I was sort of like, okay, this film wants to be this, and we're going to let it be this long and this shape. It was like, it was really speaking for itself at some point, which is a really cool process.
I have a question about the moments of the dad giving the birds and the bees talk, the boy having his first love, first kiss, all of those moments. Those really rang true to me. And I'm wondering why you chose, Richard, specifically to not make those moments tragic. Because there were moments where I was sitting in the audience, or the rest of the press people were watching, and we were like, oh no, he's drinking his first beer, something bad's going to happen, or when he's kicking the plank. Or, just there were so many moments where it could have gone another way that a lot of movies take it into this dark place. So I was wondering what that choice is for you, and maybe for the actors too. Was that cool, other than Patricia, because it was a little tragic. But yeah, could you speak more to that?
It tells you how conditioned we are. We don't make films about ordinary. Why watch a film that reflects real life? I want to watch something that does have the car wreck, does have the thing, because normality, why make art about that? You know, so we're really conditioned in films, particularly, to have the big moments, and it's fun to see audiences, even so far into this movie, when they know kind of the vibe of the movie, like the campout scene in 8th grade, they're throwing those blades around. You can just feel it. I'd never anticipated that. It was not. Never my conception. I'd never crossed my mind anything bad would happen. It's bad enough what they're talking about and what's the effect on, you know, a young man's psyche. But no, it never crossed my mind. But it shows you how conditioned we are. I mean, most of that stuff doesn't happen. Most of us do survive childhood. Most of us, you know, not all, but most, amazingly. So it was, everything about this movie fits into the statistical norms. You know, you do survive. You do get through that. There's all these little bumps and bruises along the way, but it's not. It was never about the big stuff, and we don't show a lot of that stuff because it was really like a memory. You know, the things you remember from your life, not the. And it's not the big moments. You know, that's not the best.
I mean, yeah, it was great to have those kind of minor things dwelled on. You know, because I think growing up. And just being so oversaturated with stories like that just focus on these like big, you know, dramatic moments with the trumpets kind of blaring and then you get to experience in your life and it's never like that, and so it's like you almost feel kind of invalid because your life doesn't have these dramatic plot points, and it's kind of therapeutic to just get to like focus on the importance of just everyday life.
Thank you.
Richard, you've had a lot of success, you and Ethan, with the Before series. Any thought given to maybe spending another 12 years and doing Manhood? Manson through his 20s and 30s?
You know, this is so new. This isn't even over for us yet. I mean, it doesn't even feel like we finished the movie. It's been less than a year since we stopped shooting. I just haven't even thought of that at all. It's just the way Ethan and I, 20 years ago in Vienna, it took us 5 or 6 years to even think, would we ever revisit those characters? So, way too fresh to have any ideas, but you know, anything's possible. But you don't know where your thoughts will take you in the future. You just don't know. So
also, I don't think that's even possible if it doesn't make any money. Get people to see this movie,
yeah,
and then maybe someone would give some money.
To give you the review.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, basically, it's up to you.
Would you ever want to make a movie in this process again? Let's say not even a sequel to this, but just spending.
Yeah, I mean, it is a storytelling possibility that is now demonstrated, I think, in a way that, yes, film, you can use time in this way. I don't have any other story immediately that would require this. This was unique to tell this story. So I think maybe someone else could run with it, but I don't currently have a story that would... It's a fun thing to think about.
One of my favorite scenes of this film is Ethan's character giving the sex education to kids. And that was really good. It's the best sex education I ever seen. And Patricia's character kind of telling Ellar's character leaving the home. It's like next to gonna be my female or something. That you said that line. That was really best. So how about as a parent in your real life? So how about the sex education lecture moment? Have you ever had any kind of awkward living with a kid and have the kids growing up so fast, so it's like a feeling like some kind of like depressed or like a shocking feeling?
It's amazing to me with how much we're inundated with images of sexuality in every advertising tool that's used, and how much it's just we're just inundated with that kind of how hard it is for us to talk about it. You know, and in actuality, I mean, I think it's funny. Lorelei and I've known each other since she was a little girl, and a lot of our feelings of awkwardness in that scene are we're both acting and both not acting. You know what I mean? It's like two things are happening simultaneously. It's like, wow, Lorelei's actually old enough to play this scene. You know, you know what I mean? I mean that's even interesting, and how I found in my experiences as a father, you know, I'm an actor, right? I'm a bohemian person. I struggle with, especially cross-gender. I don't know why. In a way, it's easier with young men to make jokes about it. But I love how your character gets up to go to the bathroom, and it's kind of clear that my character doesn't want you to leave. I need somebody around to talk to. And
a snicker too.
Yeah, to make it not so specific.
Yeah. But I mean, and I even, if I recall, in the shooting script of that, I even made some slightly off-color remarks that didn't make the final cut. You know, it's such a fine line of how to speak to a young person about sexuality. And, you know, we as parents don't have a rule book about how to do that. I remember myself just being absolutely petrified, and I put a human sex ed book in my daughter's room. I just left it in there. It had pictures and diagrams and stuff like that. I just dropped it in there.
I think there's something natural about that resistance, because really you should not be having anything to do with sex with your parents. So when they're bringing it up about talking about your changing sexuality, it's like, wait, I may be a sexual being becoming, and maybe you have some knowledge of being a sexual being, but let's never the two shall meet. You have to have that conversation, but it's also like every cell in nature is like, no, like repellent.
Yeah.
You
the
have
magnets
it,
are pushing
but
the
you
other way.
don't want to have it.
And Lorelei that year was so kind of disgusted with any thought of that. I don't know if she wants to talk about that. So that wasn't really. That wasn't my. But it is very self-conscious parenting, though. I like it's similar to when Ethan pulls the car over and says, "Okay, we're going to talk to one." You can see this self-conscious. I want a parent. You know, even in that scene, he's like, "We can do this." You know, the sex scene. Come on, we can do this. He's trying to be a parent. They're very consciously putting forth the effort. There's something kind of touching about that.
So when you left the book in your daughter's room, did she toss it out the door, or did she leave it in front of your door?
For me, you know, I mean, the problem with it is it's easy to make jokes about, but the problem is that teenage pregnancy is extremely real, and a lot of young people don't kind of understand that their bodies actually do work, and it will impact their whole lives. I mean, I know that my father feels very much the way that the character in the movie feels about. He didn't put himself in the best situation to parent me the way that his own personal ethics and responsibility he would like to. He just put himself in a disadvantaged position, you know. And in answer to your question, I have a 16-year-old daughter now, and I'm sworn I'm not allowed to speak to you guys about her, so I cannot answer that question.
I think it's important also to have that conversation because there's a lot of misinformation that kids are getting. And now, because even from their time to now, sexuality is being skewed by the internet and the algorithm of Google. When some 8-year-old wants to look at boobs, goes to the deviant skewed because the person that's looking at porn sites of the most intense breast sexuality act you could do is pulling the algorithm that way. So even their sexuality and their emerging sexuality is going to be totally different than kids of tomorrow. I mean, these conversations have to be had, but we're living in this incredibly exposed culture, and the sexuality that's displayed in what they're going to be exposed to isn't human really, and isn't beautiful really, isn't necessarily self-loving or respectful of each other. So,
and obviously the kids were the ones that changed physically the most throughout this film, but Patricia and Ethan, I mean, you guys see yourselves in movie roles all the time, but this was different. Was this weird for you two to see yourselves kind of, you know, mature on screen year after year, and was it kind of like a scrapbook for you?
We sat there together at Sundance this year. It was pretty intense.
pretty brutal. Yeah, pretty sort of like being drawn and quartered.
Walking in Ethan, the day before, he goes, "Hey, I'm in a movie where I'm 32. I said, "Yeah, but that movie by the end, yeah."
When
You're 82.
When the movie started, I had this feeling of like, man, I still look good, you know? And then I'm like,
Yeah.
But no, it's fun. Everybody acts like there's some kind of you know, you know, like when it's really hot, people are always saying, God, it's hot, isn't it? It's so hot. You guys hot? And they're like dripping with, and then about 5 minutes go by and somebody still goes, "Geez, it's hot. It's really hot in here," right? And that's the way it is with aging. Everybody keeps talking about it as if, but it's happening all the time to everyone. And we act freaked out about it, but it's just the reality, and it always is. The second you buy a car, it's a used car. I mean, that's the way we are, man. This machine is in action, and I try to be really proud of it. You know, I mean, I don't know why we live in we support this idea that the best time of your life is when your skin is great, because it's one time of your life. But
I think there's also a weird thing that, like, because we both, even though this movie's very real, and I think it feels like a real family, and I think hopefully you believe what these people are doing. Also, you've seen us in movies before, and you've seen us in movies when we were younger, and so there's a familiarity in that, as if actors are supposed to freeze in time, or that's the time that you recognize them in, or something. And it's inauthentic, and it's also, most stories are about a young man and a young woman falling in love, and that's an important human dynamic, and that's an important story to tell. But it's not the only story of the human experience. And I always thought, you know, the life of an ingenue is very short-lived, and I never wanted to fall for that story. So even when I was of that age, I wanted to get out of it as quick as I possibly could. So that's part of, actually, I mean, I joke that it was horrifying to see it, but I would revel a little bit in it as it was coming. Like, this is a year she's really not happy. Yeah, oh, it's good. I'm working, then I'm going to be flying. I'm going to stay up all night, and I'm going to be tired. It's not a happy time in her life. So there were times where I even wanted to look worse than I really looked in my own life. Like, I love that humanness about it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I've never worked with two less vain actors than these two right here. I mean, it's like Patricia's like, oh, it's Saturday morning. I wouldn't have, you know, like not many actors approach their looks that way. But it's like it was all about the character. It's just kind of fearless, you know.
But you're just wondering, in the privacy of your own home or your computer or whatever, do you have like some kind of epic 4 or 5 hour cut of Boyhood that maybe
No.
you would? Oh.
No, there's not a different. There's very little on the floor, just little bits and pieces, just like because we just didn't have the time or money to just shoot a whole bunch of stuff. It was really that year of thinking made it pretty finely honed by the time we were shooting. So there really isn't. There's some alternative takes. You know, that might be fun to put on a DVD. The first year when Lorelei singing the Britney Spears song, we actually, because you never know the future, we might not get the rights to it. She did a number, and I want to unearth this. She did a number from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. I want to see that now. But so there's things like that, just alternates. But there's not a lot, really, not that much.
But there's interviews, you were saying, right? Of
Yeah.
the kids at each year.
Oh. Yeah, there's definitely a making of. I think the title of that, according to them, will be 12 Years a Slave. There's some incredible behind-the-scenes stuff. I don't know what we're going to do with it.
For all of you, the first time you watched the movie, and you watched from beginning to end, were there any moments that just especially struck you where you went, oh my god, I can't believe I had that haircut, or we totally predicted the Star Wars reboot, and it's the same year, by the way, we all loved. Were there just moments like that, watching it the first time, that just struck you in any particular way?
Well, I know Lorelei had a lot of horrible. I was sitting next to you for a lot of it. There were a lot of haircuts you didn't like.
To ask that question, the answer would be the whole thing.
I don't know. I not the first time. I kind of got more sick of myself watching it 2 or 3 more times. First time it was just kind of very emotional, and like kind of every emotion you can feel all at once. But I don't know.
The first time,
I
Oh,
think
sorry.
the very when the credits roll is really kind of the most striking moment for me, just because, like, especially watching it the first time, because that moment that Mason is kind of leading into is very much what I was experiencing, at that time, and still am, to an extent. So it's like kind of that. What happens after, after the credits is kind of where I am now. So that really is always very emotional for me.
Last question?
Do you ever feel like, I guess this is for Ellar and Lorelei, do you guys ever feel like your own personal lives were kind of parallel with what your characters were experiencing in the film? Like, were you guys like experiencing like your first love? I mean, not to get too personal, but like when you're in high school, like were you also experiencing like first love at the same time as well?
Yeah, I mean, emotionally there are definitely like parallels, kind of subtly. I think both of our lives are really different from the characters growing up. Like actual experiences and specific kind of situations that we were in. So it is kind of strange, to kind of recognize emotions and in the characters, but they're in very different situations. So.
That'll be
Thank you.
So thank you.
answer.
Thank you again, Scott again, and Richard Linklater, Patricia Arquette, Ethan Hawke, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.